discussing about food, so let me know when you're going to be here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. It has been quite a while since we had an Office Hour session, so we are glad to be bringing these back. Today, we are joined, we being Francesco and I. Again, I'm Kristen Gastaldo. I'm your community manager. We are joined today by our XD team, and they are going to do an intro to who they are, what they do. Some of them you've probably met at Beacon, so this will be a nice intro to the team. I do have a couple announcements for today. We have another Tech Talk Live coming up the second Wednesday in September. It'll be September 13th. Our content is still TBD, so I will update that link as soon as we have our session confirmed. And then following that, on September 22nd, we're going to have our Global Hackathon. If you haven't checked out the hackathon page in the community lately, there are several new projects, several new local rooms. So be sure to check it out and sign up for a team you'd like to be on. So it's not too late to suggest a project if you have something you're working on as well. For anybody in London or Maidenhead area, we would love to have people come to the offices. So you're more than welcome to come to Alfresco's offices, work with the teams there. We'll have teams in both locations. So just let us know if you want to come. There is a document in the Collaborate space on the community where you can sign up and let us know which space you'll be at. After several months, we have lots of things to catch up on, so I'm going to hand it over to Francesco, who's got his latest community news update.
Thank you, Kristen. Hi, hello, everyone. My name is Francesco Corti. I'm Product Evangelist for Alfresco. I want to be very short because today the main topic is about meeting the team. So, as usual, at the office hour, I start to share my screen. Can you see my screen, guys? Can you see my screen?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, thank you very much. So it has been a lot of time, as Kristen was saying, and as you probably know, since April, because April was the last time I was on one office hour, we will not talk about news in general in this what's going on since the last time, but we prefer to focus our attention on the Alfresco news. So what happens since April? So first of all, in April happens that, so the Beacon happened. It has been a very relevant success this year, more than the year before. And what about the next year? Okay, so moving the topic, since April, we had quite interesting Tech Talk Live. I would like to remind Tech Talk Live about test automation system in April. We had in May the Alfresco SDK introduction, and we have a very interesting introduction about the World Digital Business Platform, introducing the Alfresco content services with the help of Angel Borroy. We introduced the BPM staff, the activity and process services webinar with Maurizio Salatino and Bassam. And we introduced the governance services with the governance services team. Do you want to be next? If you are in the community or not, you want to join us, please let us know. We'll be more than happy. Since last time, we had 4 versions of ADF, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, of course, and 1.7, and a new strategy, release strategy shared from Eugenio Romano. Also, Activity 6 has been released at the end of May, and at the end of May, but also later on, we had several Alfresco process services released, 1.1, 1.6.2, 3, and 4. So also Activity 7 kickoff roadmap. So you probably know, and if you don't know, please be aware, because it's an interesting stuff that Maurizio Salatino always share on a weekly basis an update on the works on Activity 6. Stay tuned because it's really interesting. Also, Governance Services has been released in May, a new version, and in June, the community with Angel Borroy, together with some Alfresco engineers, you can see Mario Romano, Maurizio Salatino, and me, we attend the Java Barcelona conference in June again. In May and July, 2 releases of the Alfresco community. And one update, guys, is that we are landing to 6th version of Alfresco Community Edition. So stay tuned on that. Of course, the whole digital business platform has been renewed, and you can see also in July the Alfresco Search Services 1.1.0, and of course the brand new getting started about search services. Are you aware that you can contribute developing your own video and you can be knowledge and recognize? If you want, you can contact Handy, Kristen, or me, or join the community sourced video page inside the community portal. You can help us and be recognized as a community contributor. You are probably aware that on a weekly basis we have a community newsletter that summarizes all the stuff around the newsletter. Thank you very much, Kristen, for that. And last but not least, we want to remind you that the 27th of September we will have a hackathon led by the community, in this case from Axel Faust, but is not only a community contribution. We have lots of Alfresco engineering working on some projects. So we have a dedicated space on Jive. Please join and let us know. If you want, the hackathon is virtual, but you can also join physically. We have lots of rooms all over the world, let me say. So stay tuned and let us know what you want. Okay, I have been in 5 minutes. This is the goal. So if you want updates on details, please contact me. I will be more than happy to share details and information. So let me stop sharing the screen. Okay, now you should see me. I would like to thank you again, the team, to be here with us, explaining what they do and showing interesting stuff. You will see later on in the webinar. So I will move the mic to Lisa. And Lisa, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Francesco. Hi, everyone. I've got my XD team here with me, or 3 of us, I guess. A couple of us are out sick today. So before we get started, we'll do a couple of quick introductions, who we are, where we came from, what we're working on, and then we'll talk you through some of how we do our work, a bit more deep dive in some of the projects we are working on, and then a recap of the research we did with some of you at Beacon this year. So I am Lisa Tyerman. I lead the design team here. I've been at Alfresco not quite 2 years, just coming up my 2 years in September. I moved over from the US, so my accent does not sound very British yet. I'm working on that. And let's see what else. I came from Apple. Before Apple, I was at Yahoo. Before Yahoo, I was at IBM. And I will move on to Stephen.
Thanks, Lisa. Stephen Soppo. I'm the Experience Design Manager here at Alfresco. I've been here a little over 2 years now. Background-wise, came from a company called Thunderhead, who specialize in customer engagement. Before that, I was in a company called Blackthorn, who were more into GRC, so governance, risk, and compliance. And yeah, so I've kind of been in the enterprise software environment for a little over 6 years now. In terms of what I do at Alfresco, worked a little bit on activities, a bit on, well, a bit on desktop sync, Mac version and Windows version. What else have I worked on?
One of the standards.
Yeah, standards as well, actually. Yeah, so also did a bit of work in the standards, myself and another colleague. Should I go for the standards now?
Actually, we'll pass the intros around.
Okay, yeah, so that's it for now, and I'll pass on to Shane.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi, everyone. I'm Shane Madjak. I'm a lead user experience designer here at Alfresco. I'm working on governance services projects and integration services projects at the moment, but I kind of keep an eye on everything that's going on in all areas of our product design here. Been at Alfresco for about 3 years now. Some history about me: I studied industrial design way back. And I've kind of transitioned through to user experience design from product design. I've worked for various enterprise software companies over the years, and Citrix was the company I'd worked for last. Yeah, and now I'm here at Alfresco to try and make a difference. Yeah. That's me. Back to Lisa.
Emma?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ashraf, and I'm a lead user experience designer here at Alfresco. I work on search and analytics, the digital business platform, and accessibility. I've worked at Alfresco for 5 months. I come from a technical background. I studied artificial intelligence and computer science at university. I started my career as a software engineer, and I've worked at Capgemini, I've worked at Oxfam, I've worked at Nokia, I've worked at Avis, Big White Wall, and most recently at Ubuntu. I moved into UX as I had an interest in solving problems from the human and user perspective. I'll pass back to Lisa.
Okie doke. I'm going to try and screen share, so bear with me. Okay. Are you seeing what looks like an org chart? Yep. Okay. So I thought I'd talk a tiny bit about how the team is structured here and how we work within the company. I think a lot of you have probably worked with UX or XD, depending on what company you're at and what they want to call themselves. We call ourselves experience designers because we want to make sure we're not thinking in explicit transactions, but we're actually zooming out and looking holistically at the whole experience for the users, including developers who the platform products are our primary users. So the way we've set up the team here is we've got my position, which oversees everything. And we have a lead researcher, because working with our users to understand their perspective is super important to being able to deliver products that meet those needs. We have a UI lead architect. That's to make sure that we are designing consistent experiences across products and also with components that are being used to design solutions. We want to make sure that there's consistency in those experiences as well. And then we have the design manager who oversees all the design work, but also does design work on the shared services of the platform. Then we have 3 very, very senior designers, all pretty much leads at this point. And we have focused on the way the platform, the digital business platform is structured. So we cover our core services with content and governance, also process, and then intelligence and analytics, which is in some ways also a shared service across the core services. Sorry, let me put that in play mode. That'll be a bit. There we go. So a bit about the process here. I think every company and every UX team probably has their own version of this process. Some people call it design thinking, some people call it user-centered design. It's really one and the same. And it's really about starting with users to make sure we understand what problems to solve. So we may start a little bit with what we call a defining stage, or we could figure out in an area what we might want to work on. So what are the problems we can solve? Then we start to bring in users and get user information and feedback and observations to really understand what problems we should solve. Then we go into the design stage where we actually begin to try to solve those problems. And these are all iterative cycles because as we design, we also want to validate if we are actually solving the problems we thought we were solving. So we call that alignment, and we work with users to do that validation.
Hey, Lisa. Sorry to interrupt. I think I'm still seeing the team structure slide. I don't know if you want to try to change that again. There we go.
Oh, is that better?
Yeah,
I think it's not working in play mode, which will be interesting for the next step. But, okay, so thanks for letting me know.
Sure.
I'll kind of walk back through those so you have the visuals with them. But largely, we work in an iterative process. We start really by defining the problems that we could solve. There's always a range. There's generally lots of opinions. People have past experience, but where the risk comes if you just sit in a room with people internally is you may not be getting the problems that users really need solved that they're really experiencing. So we start with trying to understand the problem space, but then we very quickly go out to work with users to really understand where the problems are. Then we start designing the solutions for those problems, but they're not really solutions till we validate that we've actually solved the problems. So that's how we work here. We work very collaboratively with both product management and engineering because we feel like everybody's got a perspective. We also sometimes have arm wrestling matches over business requirements and technical feasibility or the technical cost of doing something, and then the user perspective. And we can get some very lively discussions going, but I think at the end we try to get to a place where we feel like we're addressing all of the needs as best we can. So that's a bit about our process. I'm actually now going to turn over to Shane and Sema, and they'll talk a little bit more in detail about some of the experiences they have working as designers on the products here.
Okay, I can start.
Okay.
So I've been working on search and analytics and the digital business platform. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I tackled one of the problems that we were trying to address that customers had, and it was around how best to utilize analytics, because they were using a number of systems and they wanted something shipped with Alfresco. So the first, again, similar to how Lisa described, the first task was to sort of understand the problem. So working very closely with the product manager to kind of define what the requirements were, what the feedback we'd received was, and to sort of undertake some preliminary background research on what is analytics, what's the understanding of analytics, what types of analytics are out there, what sort of psychology of analytics and visualizations exist, and then forming hypotheses around that. So there are a number of hypotheses around what users would want from an analytics solution, our customers. And then, so the next step was to sort of analyze how we were going to do this. And there are already a number of mature analytics solutions out there. So do we want to create something from scratch? That's unlikely. Or do we want to utilize something and have that integrated with Alfresco? And so I conducted some product analysis of open source software that ticks all the boxes, and then did some competitor analysis of what's already out there. And then after that, the next stage was to talk to customers. So send out a survey on what their analytics needs were, what they expected to, what they were trying to do. Was it around usage? Was it around traffic? And then conducting 15 customer interviews as well. And this helped to analyze, the analysis helped us to prove and disprove some of the hypotheses that we had. And the end result was determining a tool that we could provide, as well as an out-of-the-box experience. So the next step from that is to design this out-of-the-box, what's going to come out of the box based on what the feedback we got from the customers. So that's just a little overview of how how design and product management working collaboratively tackled some of the issues around analytics. I hope that makes sense, and I'll pass over to Shane.
Thanks, Emma. I'm sorry for forgetting about you earlier. So yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about a governance project we're working on currently, and it's almost at release stage, and kind of talk you through the process of that, what we went through and how we got to like the solution we did. And I'm not going to talk directly about the feature itself, but it was kind of a way of making classification more easier, more efficient for users who are classifying content, and kind of at the same time trying to make that a more accurate process as well. So at the beginning of the process, you kind of, again, need to define what the problem is you're solving. And a lot of the records management governance subjects are quite technical and quite alien to us. So we do have to really find out what that's all about and understand the problem. Fortunately, we have some regular customers we can talk to and kind of figure out what that problem is, refine that problem statement, and kind of get a shared understanding across the whole team and the customers we're talking to about what it is we're actually solving. And then once we've got that, we'll kind of move into like the task flow, 3-in-a-box creation, where we're kind of talking through the sequential flows of what needs to be done in this this new feature, and that can be a back and forth, an iterative process, going back to the customer, showing them something, getting validation on that before we move into kind of a more wireframing, actually start designing the screens and the UI, the UX, the user experience. Again, that's an iteration where we'll go back and forward to the customer, making sure we're on the track and we've got it right. And once we've at a stage where, yeah, we've got something pretty good here, we'll kind of refine it a bit more. And there's kind of a process of going to our user assistance team, which is kind of people who look at terminology and messaging within that design, and they do documentation as well. So there's kind of that phase where we interact with those team members, and we'll also kind of write specs for these designs to kind of help engineering teams understand how to build this and what we want out of that design. And yeah, then there'll be an ongoing kind of review process where I'll oversee kind of how that's being built. So we're involved right to the point of release, and then hopefully we have something that we can be sure is a successful design at the end of it. So yeah, that's me. I don't know if there's any questions on that.
If not, we'll jump right into the next presentation. So Stephen's going to talk to you a little bit about one of our key initiatives that the whole team is working on, and we're working across products, and also for what most of you will be familiar with, the ADF components. So when I got here almost a few years ago, there was not a single standard around style guide. So if you noticed, if you worked with multiple Alfresco products, you probably experienced the fact that they looked like they came from different companies, and sometimes that variation even extended from the desktop to the mobile clients. It just looked like a collection of products from different companies. So one of our primary goals was to get a consistent look and feel and experience across the whole fleet and bring those standards into the ADF component world, because we were leveraging affordances and best practices. So Stephen's going to talk to you a bit about the work we've been doing there with the components and standards.
Thanks, Lisa. So yeah, as Lisa said, so we work on the components along with another colleague of mine. So the first thing we did really was just kind of take a step back and try and figure out what our brand values are. And by brand values, specifically looking at our visual identity as well as our voice identity. So things like how we sound in terms of language, tagline, and just visual communication styles. By visual identity, I'm talking more about what kind of style, clean, simple, I guess timeless in some cases, and familiar designs where users can, identify what they need to do very easily. So from that point onwards, we kind of went into our standards. So looking at things like color, typography, and layout, theme, and main thing we really wanted to do was just to make sure that everything was consistent across the board. So for colors, we made sure they were, what we had accessibility in mind, make sure that we were compliant. So typography, wanted a clean, obviously good-looking typography, and a similar thing for layout, but also focused on behavior, having a consistent behavior across our components as well. So all these things in mind kind of gave us a good understanding and a good starting point to kind of start standardizing all the components we needed to kind of create. So yeah, we started standardizing our interaction patterns, and these are obviously what developers would call the components, which will eventually live in a components library, so you have all the assets in one space. And by standardizing, what we looked at was basically a consistent design across the board, and also having a consistent functional specification across the board as well. And the specification consisted of looking at things like behavior, interaction, values, iterations, because sometimes certain designs are not going to fit the requirements, so changes have to be made. So we've tried to capture that as well in our specifications. So I have an example spec I can show, just to kind of give you an idea of how we work, the templates that we've designed and we're working with, and just to give you a better understanding, really. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh yeah, yeah, it's be good to get some feedback from, I guess, anybody if you have any questions. Share. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this is a destination picker. So most of you probably know this as a content picker, but yeah, we call it a destination picker here at Alfresco for certain reasons. But the whole idea of this template is to show you the format in which we are kind of designing these components in. So at the very top, you can see we have the name of the component. Then we have a brief description to give a bit more help to us understand what the component is used for and when it's used. A brief image here, an image here to show the different parts that make up the component. So in this case, we've listed all the parts here. So we have dialogues, search, dropdown, breadcrumb, and list. So these are all the parts that basically make up the components. And then we go a bit more deeper with the actual specification and the usage. So we have usage and behavior at a higher level, so for the component in general, but then we also have specification around the actual components within the components. So for example, we have a dialogue within this component, so we will specify the usage and behavior around the dialogues. And it's not just about, you know, looking at size and placement, but also interactions. You know, what happens to the colors when the buttons are clicked? You know, what happens when, how many items do we display by default? These are not all set in stone. Obviously, you know, the developers have the opportunity to customize these, but we thought it was good to provide a guideline. So, you know, developers are not starting from scratch. So yeah, I'm not going to read every single thing to you, but as you can see, as I mentioned earlier on, we have usage, behavior, interaction, and in some cases states as well. So where we have our default states, we'll capture that. Where we have our, you know, other states as well, we'll capture those here in this section as well. And then we do exactly the same thing for search. So for search, slightly a bit more meatier. We have hint text, for example, so that's slightly different, more specific to search. So just trying to show the granular details in which we're going to kind of help developers build these components. So yeah, and it's more or less the same thing for drop downs, breadcrumbs, and here we have a list. The other thing I haven't actually mentioned is because we're working on so many components, what we do is we reference components as well. So the idea is for lists, we have a separate components that we're basically pulling in, we're leveraging. So from a developer perspective, eventually we'll be able to just click on reference list specification and have a much comprehensive specification around lists that obviously they can use to understand exactly what the requirements are. And again, all these are guides to help developers, you know, create these components. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions?
No questions from the RT channel and the YouTube channel. Feel free to raise your question if you have. Thank you, Stephen, for your introduction.
Thank you.
Do you want to present the beacon deck? Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the role of research here. I think you've heard from Shane and Fema that we really try to focus a lot on research to help inform the decisions we should make about what products, not only what products to build or products and features, but also how to design them. So I think if for anyone who was at BCom that stopped by to chat with Stephen, myself, or Paul Hampton, thank you very much. We were at BCom this year to do some work on a project we were doing to help improve the technical evaluation process. So we leveraged a lot of input from all of you, so we appreciate that. Next slide. We also supplemented that with some work with some of our architects internally, and then we also had a technical architect council. So we managed to present some of the findings to them and get their feedback, and it was good to see a lot of the same themes reinforced, so we felt like we had some good confidence in decision making moving forward. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about the study, what we did, why we did it, how we did it, some of the themes and trends that we learned from the input we got, just kind of the summary then of how users evaluated technology. I'd like to do some key findings, get your feedback, make this part probably more interactive. If you have questions or you want to comment or agree or disagree on anything, please chime in. We'd love to hear that. We are still working on this as a company, so this is still very much a work in progress. So we'll talk about things that were identified as key user needs when you're doing a technical evaluation, and some things that were really not fan pleasers or crowd pleasers, which I think you maybe get a lot of agreement, I hope, in that section. Okay, Stephen. So we did what's called a participatory design study, partly because Paul Hampton has a hard time saying that, so we picked that study just so he could trip over it every time he had to present. But really, participatory design is kind of what it sounds like it would be. It's participating, it's user participating in a design activity. And that design activity at Beacon and with the Alfresco architects was trying to understand what the best way to evaluate a technical solution would be. And these are sort of enterprise scale solutions that we're looking at. It wasn't necessarily focused on Alfresco specifically because we don't know that we're doing it the best way. We really wanted to hear what the best, most effective ways to answer your technical evaluation questions were. We got to talk to 29 developers and 7 architects, so it was, I think, a very good turnout. It kept us pretty busy for 3 days. And then again, with 5 Alfresco architects, that's what these findings are. We did again present these to 5 more architects at the Technical Architects Council. The analysis is really, when we looked at everything everybody told us, and then we kind of clustered all of the similar findings into like activities, interests, and dislikes, then we did a sort of general inventory across all of those evaluation paths, and we were able to come up with some good trends. Okay. So this is a bit what it looked like. Some of the, you can see that on the far left are the different inputs from the interviews. Then top right, the colorful piece, is where we started to aggregate all of those findings into kind of trend groups, and then just a lot of detailed analysis of what those trends were telling us. So awful lot of work, really, really appreciate it. We had a ton of good information. So now I'll talk a bit about what that information told us. The right to observations. Okay, so one of the key observations, and I think we probably anticipated this, was that there's not really one dominant evaluation path, but there were definitely trends in the top 3 actions that people would take. Probably also not surprising to anyone is that hands-on would be the #1 action for evaluation. You can read anything you want, people can say whatever they want, but you can't really tell where the words and actions align until you get your hands on it. Customer feedback was perceived as the real story. That was really strongly relied on, sometimes and almost exclusively to the exclusion of analysts and vendor information. That was perceived as kind of marketing or sales talk and not necessarily always the full or true story. And community engagement was a huge indicator of the viability of the company and the product. I think that was usually in the top 3 things that people checked first. Next. Again, documentation. Generally all technical resources, but huge emphasis on documentation was heavily considered in evaluating. So even before some people went into the hands-on, they went to check to see what kind of documentation would be there to support them, how comprehensive it was, how well organized was it, how easy to find was it. We found a trend with architects and more senior developers were more likely to consider kind of the bigger picture requirements, such as the tech stack, integrations, installation dependencies, total cost of ownership, future-proofing. Was there a roadmap that they could evaluate against to make sure that they were heading down a different direction than we were? Also, architects were more likely to start with solution requirements. That is the what problem are we solving question. That was, if they had a clear definition of that, they could then evaluate, is this a solution for that problem? In addition to documentation, sorry, nope, stay back. Thanks. One more. Back.
We cannot hear you.
I think we lost your mic, Lisa. I don't hear you at all talking now.
Probably, I don't know. Lisa, can you hear us?
Lisa, do you hear us? It doesn't sound. I think they actually dropped because they were sharing a connection. Hang on, everybody. We'll ping Lisa and get her to hold up a sec.
unfortunately, just to wait a little bit. Unfortunately, because in the wrong moment, because we were hearing about really interesting stuff around the results of results about the beacon events. So we are trying to find again and connect again Lisa. Contacting Lisa.
I just pinged her. Maybe she'll see that.
Let's find. I'm trying to contact Lisa on Zoom. Let me. Lisa. Oh, now Shane is back.
Stephen, yeah, Stephen. I
Shane,
think it was.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Stephen.
I think it's Stephen's connection. Yeah, I think we lost Stephen, and then we lost. Since y'all were sharing a mic, we lost you all. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay if you want to reshare your screen.
You're back.
Got it.
There we go. Okay.
Excellent. All right. Sorry about that.
We just lost you about the point where you were asking Stephen to back up. So a couple minutes ago.
So did you hear anything about this chart, the evaluation chart?
Yes, we did start with this chart. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So yes, hands-on came in two formats. One was a sort of a lightweight, let's see what this is about, and then the other one was a deep dive proof of concept with much bigger time commitment. I think tended to happen when people were more serious about the product that they were looking at. Feedback and community was the second highest evaluation activity. So lots of checking to see not only how big was the community, but how active, how engaged, what kinds of questions. A lot of the people we spoke to viewed that as the best way to get fast information. So if they had a problem, they wanted to see if someone else also had that problem. Maybe it's already solved, maybe people have experience that they can leverage. They relied a lot more of that on the feedback and community, also to gauge how effective the longevity of the company and the product might be. They also made sure to identify requirements. Can't determine if it's a solution if you don't know what you're solving for. So that actually factored up quite high in the evaluation process. Evaluating what resources are available. Also searching for solutions. What else is out there? What are people saying about it? Reviewing the documentation, architectural information. A few people were brave enough to admit to going to the vendor site or checking on vendor news. Other was a host of things that popped up for maybe one or two people. Licensing was actually something that I wonder if we should pay a little more attention to, particularly in making it clear what the terms and the costs are, so there's no hidden surprise downstream where people made an evaluation choice. One person admitted to checking analyst review, and then also total cost of ownership and the sustainability. So hopefully no surprises there, particularly in the top 3 to 5 activities or where that strong emphasis was on these are critical things for doing a technical evaluation. Next slide, please. Thanks.
So you know, Francesco and I just do a little dance with this slide.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought you would like that one.
No surprise, but very excitement. So it's a confirmation, let me say. So happy to hear, to see this.
Yeah, it was really cool to hear that and hear it echo through all groups. The Beacon group, the architects internally, and also the Technical Architect Council is very, very much clearly a trend. So again, the summary of the journey is that there actually isn't a single way of proceeding, and it's also not a linear path up. And obviously, I think once you get to a proof of concept stage, it definitely isn't going to be linear because you're going to be coding and looking stuff up and asking questions and all round and round and round. Again, the top 3 things: the hands-on evaluation, reviewing customer, user, and partner reviews, seeking out actual user feedback was really important too. That's, I think, where they felt the true story really was. And then defining and prioritizing the requirements to make sure you're picking the right solution. Hands-on evaluations consisted usually of one or more of the following: an exploration, just what is this about, what can it do, how easily am I able to figure things out. Definitely a proof of concept, time box. One developer liked to try to break products, try to really.
We probably lost Stephen. Now we understand this.
Yeah, now we know what's happening. We lost Stephen again. Let's hit up Lisa.
Unfortunately, because it was amazing to see that kinds of information, and I hope it's really interesting to start diving deep in the details. And I try to move my hands. Okay, Stephen is back. No, he's trying.
He's trying.
Steve's connection dropped again.
We have Stephen again. No problem. Obviously, it's regular. Please go ahead, Lisa, if you can.
Right.
Okay.
Let's try again.
Are we ready?
I think so. I think we're good.
Okay. Or slide 10 if you want.
Slide 10.
Back in.
Slideshow.
Yes, we can see.
Excellent. Sorry about that, you guys.
Okay.
So I'll recap a bit of the hands-on evaluation because I'm not quite sure where we were when we dropped off. Again, the hands-on evaluations consisted of one or more of the following types of activities. A quick exploration. A lot of what was on the top of mind for folks when they were doing hands-on was how easily can I learn this? And the expectation was that there would be learning involved. You would have to learn something, but it was more about how learnable was the product. Proof of concept was probably the most popular hands-on activity. And that was a time-boxed formal activity. Can we do this much work in this much time? One developer, his goal in hands-on was to really try to break a product, to push it to its limits, push it past what its advertised purpose was. And then a couple of people mentioned doing vendor bake-off, taking the top 2 or 3 vendors and doing a comparative proof of concept. Next slide. Okay, so key findings. Getting to hands-on happened within the first 3 steps for most participants, so that's important. Definitely getting your hands into the product is. It must be learnable, and usually the developers felt that they could tell within a few hours if they could learn it. I have this quote, I loved this quote, IT is always changing. You expect to have to learn, but it has to be learnable. So it's kind of an evaluation of your progress versus effort and time. It was interesting because I had asked, like, well, what makes something learnable? And there was not really an easy way to qualify or quantify it. But from the answers I got, it really kind of amounted to how much progress can I make over how much effort and time. Almost everyone said they had to see progress within a day. They often reported progress in the daily stand-up. So if they couldn't make progress and make increasing progress, that gave them some early indications that this might not be a learnable, usable product. Next slide. From user reviews, so user reviews were kind of held as the fountain of truth. So a user would be a customer, an end user, a partner, or an expert user, and that feedback was the second most popular of the first 3 activities. So it's not what you think, not what you say your product can do or how well it does it. It's what does everybody else who's tried it actually say about it. It was considered to be more trusted than the vendor site. It provided the real story and the full picture, so it gave developers much more of a sense of what are they really getting into. Community size and engagement was super critical. Stack Overflow and vendor forums were the top resources for evaluating community activity and engagement. Community reflected the maturity, stability, viability of the product and the company, so it helped future-proof a business decision. And then user requirements. Refining user requirements was the 3rd most popular of those first 3 activities. Many people stated that they expected 75 to 80% of their basic requirements to be available out of the box. And requirements were used to define and prioritize the problem to solve, to evaluate whether the solution was fit for purpose, so would it actually solve the problem. And it was also used to help conduct the proof of concept based on must-have requirements. Next slide. And then just general findings. Checking for available technical resources, particularly documentation, was very important. I think it might have been the fourth most important step overall. And vendor site content was infrequently checked. I mean, aside from the documentation and technical resources, the vendor, like the marketing site, was infrequently checked. Features that were evaluated when they were evaluated were what customers, who are your reference accounts, what partners are you working with, how fresh is the site, because that reflected your stability and your reputation, and then what case studies do you have. So even when it was checked, it was really more about the kind of what is the experience, not so much.
We lost Stephen again and waiting again.
The internet is out on Friday in the UK.
It's okay. I'm pinging Stephen every time, and he'll
Thank you,
Lisa.
Shane. In any case, did you see, guys, how many, I don't know your opinion, of course, Kristen, but also the other guys, how important is the community is? So people love a product that has a supported, enhanced, and updated community in terms of content, of course, not only in terms of people. So the people are the most important stuff, but also in terms of content.
Documentation way up there too, which we are always in that constant battle of, we have a lot of resources and they're just in several locations. You know, we have Stack Overflow content, we have docs content, we have community content. Like, how do we put this on a really accessible place for these evaluations?
Interesting, really interesting. I don't know if Stephen is back.
I think he's back.
He's back, but now he can't share. So we only have a few more slides, so I'm going to time it and see if I can get us home here.
Okay, see you now.
There we go. So user needs, easy to install, turnkey trial and installation was mentioned. Customer feedback and reviews, very, very critical. Good documentation, great supporting resources and robust resources, code samples, tutorials, step-by-step. Specifically mentioned a few times was step-by-step getting started. You didn't want vague mentions. It was like, literally, what do I need to do? Partly not to walk you through, but so you can evaluate what else is needed to do this. Forums and then best practices. Plain English use cases and features. This was a fun deck to talk to marketing about, and you'll see why by the last slide. But case studies, architecture, any integration dependencies, technologies in the stack, any visual diagrams were considered helpful. And then the licensing terms, total cost of ownership, scalability, which was often a factor of cost for people. So they weren't just looking at technical scalability, but what is it going to cost to scale? And then this might have been the most fun slide to present to our marketing colleagues. Marketing content was considered too salesy, untrustworthy. What else would the company say? And it represented an incomplete picture. Thankfully, I wasn't speaking for myself, just representing the observation. It was expressed a few times that analyst reviews were considered as paid feedback, so not maybe the most trusted resource. Videos were good for showing what can be done, but less useful for showing how to do it. They're not scannable. They're very time-consuming to view. Once you have to kind of commit to the time before you know if you're going to get anything out of that time. You can't copy and paste. It's not efficient workflow for learning while you're coding, so learning while you're doing it. And those were the findings. That was the Beacon research. And thank you all so much for all the time you spent with us, giving us this information.
You know, it's interesting, that video bit. It's we get requests for videos. We hear that people want short, consumable videos, and maybe that's what ties in, is that they want short videos, right? They want something that's that they can watch for 5 minutes and have an idea of how to build something. But you're right, that does give us the if there's a bit of code in there, right? They can't copy it. They're not going to pause the video and try to get that little bit out of there, I wouldn't think. So it's definitely it's just an interesting thing to take into account, right?
Yeah, I think it definitely seemed to have a time and place, and I think that the time and place is when you're at the what can we do, and like kind of inspiration and ideation. But when you get right down to how to do it, is like, give me documentation. Can you embed help in the product? Like make it in the place that I'm working. But yeah, definitely very inefficient to jump from a video, pause, change context, code. Wait, what did that say? And yeah, so not super efficient work-wise.
In any case, I probably told you, Lisa, at the time, because I'm proudly had the chance to reply to your questions and attend the survey. But I found all the conclusion and then all the thoughts shared in the slides also valid for me as a developer. So I agree with everything I saw in the slides. Talking about the video, probably do you know what is happening? Because we are the video campaign we launch is about very precise and limited steps, focused steps, just to show how to do it in a few steps, 3 to 5 minutes, how to switch on this, how to set up that, and probably is extremely focused and could be something that people can read in a blog post or a tutorial, or can see live from one person that is that codes, so could be valuable in each case. But in any case, the information about me as a developer, I want to break the stuff and test and have a hands-on session. This is really, really valuable also for me as a developer. In exactly the same way, I want to see tutorial and read tutorials on every stuff, and I want to try everything with my hands. Really interesting, the conclusion. Did you involve the B? So you didn't ask only at the beacon. You asked to several other people. Is it correct, Lisa?
Yeah. So we worked. We also worked internally because we thought, well, it's not often that we will do user testing internally because we know so much more about what we're doing that it can bias the findings. But in this case, we were actually not talking about our product, but just evaluations in general. So we thought, well, let's work with our architects, and then also the 5 architects from the Technical Architects Council. We had an opportunity to get their input and run these findings by them as well. The only thing that came up a little bit different from that session was a lot more emphasis on information around, a lot more around security and giving more architectural information, which makes sense with that audience.
Yeah, it has a lot of sense. Thank you again for sharing, and thank you all the team. Yeah, of course. We don't have any question at the moment from the RC channel and the YouTube channel. I don't know, Kristen, if you want to take the mic or share any thoughts.
Do you have anything going on right now, Lisa, where you need feedback from our community? If you know, is there a process right now for you to get community members or any kind of input back? Like, where could people go to be involved in anything?
Thank you for that. We are, so our new researcher joined just about three months and a week ago. And she's starting to revive what we're calling the participant pool, because it's very hard to, when we need people to do research with, it's very hard to find them, and you're on a very critical time path. So we're starting to revamp the research program. So stay tuned. Once we have the forms all set up, we'll probably ask for a little bit of time and come back and announce that. And we'd love for anyone who wants to help us and give us insights. We'd love to work with you. This was really, really great information that we got with you guys at Beacon. So thank you again.
Well, when you have that sign up, we'll circulate it via the community portal if that's fine for you. Once you guys have the way you want to manage your participants set up and everything.
That would be awesome.
And speaking of the trial experience, I forgot to mention this in our announcements at the beginning, but we have 2 new spaces in the community portal. If you go to the header where it's got the forums drop down, it's got ECM, BPM, and App Dev. There is now a DevOps space. So we have several people that contribute to DevOps. We have several blog posts out there, and they have decided to open up their own space. So if you guys want to go in that section and ask questions and connect with that team, it's there. There's also a section called Platform. And if you go there, there is a lab going on right now for the platform trial. And and they want feedback, which really plays into this whole presentation today of how easy was it to install? How easy was it to follow the guide? What can we do to improve the guide? Were you actually able to get it up and running? So there is a lab section where you can download the platform trial, and then there are 2 resources for downloading and getting started in the platform, and we want some feedback on both of those. There's quest set up so you can earn some extra points, and that's live now in the community, so go check it out. And thank you to the XD team today for coming in. Obviously, we love this presentation, Francesco and I. So the anything developer focused, anything that kind of validates how we're designing our spaces and trying to set up your experience. The more direct feedback we have on that, the better. So thank you guys for coming and presenting, and we'll put you in touch with the rest of the community as needed.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having us.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Our next event, again, September 13th, will be Tech Talk Live. I'll put up the link to that once we are, confirmed on who's going to be presenting. We have a couple ideas in the mix now. So we will see you guys in a couple weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks for that.